Hello and good evening. My name is Nancy Pullen, and I am the founder and president of Educational Excellence. I'd like to thank all of you for joining our webinar this evening. Before we start, I'd like to provide you with some quick information about Educational Excellence College Planning and Tutoring Services. Educational Excellence provides a broad array of high-quality, comprehensive, and personalized college planning services for students in high school, undergraduate, and graduate school. Our services are offered to students who reside in the United States and international students, and our services are provided in your home, our office, at convenient locations, and via webcam. I personally provide all Educational Excellence college planning and tutoring services. Our #1 priority at Educational Excellence is helping your student make a wise college selection, be accepted to the college of his or her choice, and successfully achieve other important goals. Many of the services that Educational provides are on the screen before you now. Educational Excellence prides itself on the development of a customized college plan of action for each student. My students have been accepted to all of Florida and other state universities, Harvard, Columbia, and many other prestigious colleges. I have a proven tutoring record that guarantees increased target scores on the SAT and ACT tests. Please do not hesitate to contact Educational Excellence for your college planning and tutoring services. The first introductory meeting is always free, complimentary, free of charge. Before we begin to our presentation, I'd like to note for you that our webinar includes the option for you to submit questions throughout. I would try to answer as many questions as possible just after the merit scholarship and private scholarship portion of the presentation. This is our agenda for this evening. We will begin by discussing the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. Then we will discuss the CSS profile, and then college and private scholarships. Then we will do our question and answer session on the above topics. After that, for those of you who are Florida residents, we will move on to the Florida Bright Future Scholarship and other Florida scholarships and financial aid. For those of you who are non-Florida residents, it is your option as to whether you'd like to continue on after the questions on the above topics. And now let's get started. Before we hop right into the FAFSA, I'd like to say a few things about early financial planning for college. It's important for you to know that every college is now required to have on their website a net price calculator. The way that you can find the net price calculator on the college is by going to the college website, actually put net price calculator into the search box. Once the calculator pops up, it will ask you to enter information regarding family income, number of students in the family in college, perhaps the student's GPA or ACT or SAT scores, a number of pieces of information. It does not require you to submit any identifying pieces of information. Once you enter the information, it will provide a report to you that shows from that particular college or university an estimate of the amount of financial aid and merit scholarships that the student would receive. Also, it may show you the out-of-pocket expenses that the family might be expected to pay if the student was to attend that university. This net price calculator can be used at any time. You don't have to wait until the student's senior year. You can do it as early as the 9th grade. And although the numbers are not true numbers, because that only happens after the student has been accepted to the college and submitted their FAFSA and other financial aid documentation, but it certainly will provide you with an estimate as to how much financial aid and merit scholarships the student would receive from the university, and also an estimate about out-of-pocket expenses. Now let's move to the free application for federal student aid, which is known as FAFSA. This is a governmental form that all students should use to apply regardless of whether they think they qualify. You never know until you apply, what the student would not know until they apply what they qualify for. Also, when you submit a FAFSA application, in addition to being considered for any government scholarship and grants, the student may find that they will qualify for institutional aid from that specific college or university by way of their FAFSA application. There may be other opportunities that open up for the student with regard to college scholarships and financial aid that they would not receive if they had not submitted a FAFSA. A FAFSA can be completed within 30 minutes to an hour, and I definitely encourage all students to apply. Also, it's important to apply as soon as possible. The application opened for seniors in high school who are graduating this spring. The application opened on January 1, and I do encourage all students to apply as soon as possible. If students and parents should need assistance with submitting their FAFSA application, it's important to take a note at College Goals Sunday. This is a designated day each year in February when colleges and universities across the country open their doors to their financial aid and admission counselors who are on staff and available to provide parents and students with direct one-to-one assistance with submitting their FAFSA application. Usually computer terminals are set up so that the application can be submitted with the assistance of these personnel right on the spot. The link that I have provided shows you is the link that will, if you open up that link, it will show you for each state the exact date in February for that state's College Goals Sunday and the participating institutions where students may and families may go to receive assistance. All of this assistance is free of charge. Also, I'd like to note the studentaid.gov is a great link. That link provides you with all kinds of information about how to submit the FAFSA application. So that's a great link to reference as well. Now let's jump into more information about how the FAFSA or the grants and scholarships and the financial aid that the student will receive by way of the FAFSA application, how that's calculated. It's important to first understand the EFC or the family contribution. This is a governmental index that's used to calculate eligibility for financial aid. It's the amount that the family can reasonably be expected to contribute. However, it's not necessarily what the family will pay out of pocket. The reason I say this is because when the student submits the financial aid application, the FAFSA, they're being considered for certain grants, scholarships, and other kinds of awards based on just that FAFSA application. However, there are other sources of income, other sources of awards other than just the FAFSA. For instance, students who are Florida residents may qualify for the Florida Bright Future Scholarship. Other students may receive awards from private scholarships or merit scholarships from colleges. So you have to remember when you look at your EFC after you submit your FAFSA application, that EFC is an actual dollar amount that the government believes that the family can reasonably be expected to contribute towards the student's college education for the first year. But remember, it's what the government reasonably expects the family to contribute based on the governmental formulas. They're not taking into consideration other sources such as Bright Future Scholarship, private scholarships, and college merit scholarships. Your EFC stays the same regardless of which college the students is applying to. When you actually complete the application, you'll enter the names of those colleges, all colleges that the student is applying to, and the EFC is the same regardless of which college the student chooses to attend. Within that governmental formula, there are two primary components. One is the parent contribution, and we'll talk a little bit more about that shortly and how that is calculated, but that is what the parent can reasonably be expected to contribute, not necessarily what they'll pay out of pocket. Also, there is a student contribution that's looked at for students that have income and assets. Again, it's the amount that the student can reasonably be expected to contribute. As an aside, I'd like to mention that the student contribution is actually weighted much more heavily into the FAFSA formula for the EFC than the parent contribution. So students who have a significant amount of income and assets, those students will find that they will have a lower, will have a higher EFC than students that do not. So again, please note that any income and assets that are in the student's name will bring down the amount of financial aid that the student will receive per the EFC. I'm now going to review taxed and untaxed income that is reported on the FAFSA. It includes taxable and non-taxable income earned from employment, meaning wages earned. Also, payments to tax-deferred pension and savings plans paid directly or withheld from earnings, including but not limited to amounts reported on W-2 forms, IRA deductions, and payments to self-employed, SEP, simple, and KEOGH. Also, workers' compensation and private disability benefits. Also, what has been added this year as to be reported on the FAFSA are untaxed portions of health savings accounts. This was something that was not required to be reported in past years, but starting with this year's senior class, that is a requirement. Also, child support received, tax-exempt interest income, untaxed portions of pensions, untaxed portion of IRA distributions, excluding rollovers, housing, food, and other allowances paid to members of the military, clergy, and others, veterans, non-educational benefits, and money received or paid on the student's behalf that is not reported elsewhere on the FAFSA application. Also, it is required that the following items be reported on the FAFSA as applicable: education tax credits, child support paid, taxable earnings from need-based employment programs, grants and scholarships reported as part of adjusted gross income, taxable combat pay and special combat pay, and earnings from work under a cooperative education program offered by a college. Allowances that may be reported on the FAFSA include U.S. income tax paid, state and other taxes, Social Security taxes, income protection allowance, and employment expense allowance. The following assets are required to be reported on the FAFSA: the current balance of cash, savings, and checking accounts. The way that the question is worded on the FAFSA application is, if it's the parent portion, what is the parent's current balance of cash, savings, and checking accounts at the time that the FAFSA application is being completed and submitted. That's the way that the question is asked. There is the same question for the student portion of the FAFSA application. What is the current balance today, meaning the day that the application is being completed and submitted, of cash, savings, and checking accounts? Also, other assets that are required to be reported on the FAFSA include net worth of investments, including real estate, but excluding the family's primary residence. So the home that you live in, your primary residence, is not required to be reported, but any additional real estate must be reported. Also, the net worth of businesses and investment farms. Assets that are not required to be reported on the FAFSA are the family's primary residence, also the value of retirement plans and 401k plans, life insurance plans, pension funds, annuities, non-education IRAs, KEOGH, and cash checking savings accounts. You may have remembered a few slides back that I had said that payments to tax-deferred pension and savings plans, such as IRA and others, are reported. So that's a fine line to remember, is that the payments to the tax-deferred pension plans are reported, but the value of the plans are not. The EFC formula also includes the number of family members in college during that FAFSA cycle. As the number of family members in college increases, the amount of financial aid for those students in college who apply for FAFSA increases as well. It's also important to know that if the student's legal parents live together, regardless of their gender or their marital status, meaning whether or not they are legally married, information about both parents is now required to be reported on the FAFSA. This is also something new for this year's FAFSA. In prior years, this information from both parents was not required to be reported, but starting now this year with this year's FAFSA application, it is. The FAFSA application includes an IRS data transfer option. This option may not be used by parents who live together but are not legally married. And in this whole section that I'm talking about now, we're talking about the student's legal parents. I'll in a moment speak about step-parents. So this particular clause and this information that the EFC includes pertains to if both legal parents live together, regardless of their gender or marital status. Now, there is something in the FAFSA as an option called the IRS data transfer. The purpose of this option is if in the event that the student is selected by the college's financial aid office for verification, which means that the student is required to provide the tax return to the financial aid office. The financial aid office can retrieve the tax return through the IRS data transfer option. You're not required, though, to choose that option. If you wish to not elect it, when you submit the FAFSA application, and you should be selected for verification, you can either go back to the FAFSA and submit and request the option at that time, or you could simply mail a copy of the tax return to the college. However, for if students' legal parents who live together who are unmarried, the IRS data transfer option may not be used. If the parents are divorced or remarried, whichever parent pays more than 50% of the student's expenses is reported on the FAFSA. Additionally, if the step-parent lives in the household that provides that provides more than 50% of the support for the child, then the income for the biological parent that the student lives with and the step-parent both are reported. Now that I provided you with a basic understanding as to how the FAFSA process works internally with regard to the formula in EFC, I will now move forward to some important information about how to actually complete the FAFSA application. The first thing that should be done is for the student and one parent to apply for a PIN. The PIN is used to sign the FAFSA just prior to the FAFSA application being submitted. The website is listed on the screen, which should be used to request PINs. This can be done at any time for high school seniors. The website is www.pin.ed.gov. And again, the student should request a PIN and one parent should request the PIN, not both parents, one parent. But there should be two separate PIN numbers for both parent and student. The PIN number can be used to do subsequent FAFSA applications after the student's freshman year of college. So when the student becomes a freshman and then this time in January of their freshman year, they will need to go back and apply for FAFSA again for their sophomore year, that same PIN number can be used. So it's very important that those PIN numbers be kept in a safe place. Also, parents, please note that your PIN number can be used for multiple children. So if you have one student this year who's applying for FAFSA you'll obtain a PIN number for that student. You'll obtain your PIN number at this time. If you should have a second child next year who also applies for FAFSA, you can use your same PIN number for both. But for the two children, they each need to have their own PIN number. The FAFSA application opened on January 1. As I mentioned earlier, it's best to apply now to have the optimal likelihood of receiving maximum financial aid award. I do recommend that you complete the FAFSA online rather than the paper application, and the website is www.fafsa.ed.gov. The paper applications are much more time-consuming in terms of processing time, and it takes much longer to get the information to the government to process, and also for the student to find out their financial aid award. So I definitely recommend that you complete and submit your FAFSA online electronically. I'd also like to caution you about a scam FAFSA website, www.fafsa.com. Sometimes parents and students get confused because this website is very similar to the real FAFSA application, fafsa.ed.gov. Stay away from the fafsa.com. It's a scam website. It requires money to submit the FAFSA application, and please avoid it. I recommend that you avoid it at all costs. Once you have obtained your PIN number and you know the website where you go to complete the FAFSA application, prior to completing it, there's a few things that I recommend you do first. You will need to do the FAFSA application as early as possible. You will need either your 2013 tax return. If that's not available and you're planning on doing the FAFSA tomorrow or next week and likely may not have your 2013 tax return at that point, that should not hold you up from submitting the FAFSA. You should use your 2012 tax return or an estimated tax return. Submit your FAFSA using those numbers from either the 2012 tax return or an estimated tax return. Once you do receive your 2013 tax return, you go back into the FAFSA application, and there is an option for you to make corrections and readjust the numbers and then resubmit it again. Also, before you actually enter information into the online FAFSA application, especially for first-time FAFSA users, I recommend that you go to the link that's listed on the second bullet of your screen to download a hard copy of the FAFSA on the web worksheet. This worksheet is closely identical to the actual FAFSA application. And so it gives an opportunity for you to pencil in your numbers from your tax return, and then when you go to do the FAFSA application online, it's just a matter of transferring the numbers from the worksheet into the real FAFSA application. Once you've completed your FAFSA on the web worksheet, then you're ready to begin the application. Also, please know, all students who are under the age of 24, it is required that the parents' information be reported on the FAFSA. There are a few exceptions to this called a dependency override in a number of less frequent circumstances where a child may be emancipated from the court, and in those instances there are certain criteria by which a student could have a dependent override. But by and large, for most students who are under the age of 24, the parents' information must be reported on the FAFSA. When you begin to complete the worksheets and the application, let me explain how the year numbers work. For students in the high school graduating class of 2014, you should be using the 2014-15 FAFSA worksheet and the 2014-15 FAFSA application if the student is starting college in the fall semester of 2014. Sometimes students begin college in the summer just prior to the fall semester. For those students who will be starting college in summer 2014, you actually need to do 2 separate FAFSA applications, one for the 2014-15 school year and one for the 2013-14 school year. That 2013-14 application covers the summer, so you will be considered for financial aid in the summer, and the 2014-15 covers the fall 2014, spring 2015, and summer 2015 semesters. Once you have completed your FAFSA application, and as soon as you submit it, you will immediately receive your EFC number. We talked about the EFC earlier in the presentation. Also, you will be able to review your eligibility. There are several types of FAFSA awards. The first are grants and scholarships, which is money that does not have to be paid back. The second type is work study, whereby a student is offered an employment position, usually on the campus of the institution that they will be attending. Please note that for grants and scholarships, the money and awards are automatically sent to the business office of the college where the student is attending. For students who are in work study, rather than their earnings being sent to the business office, a check is paid directly to the student. A third type of FAFSA award are loans, which is money that must be paid back. You may qualify for a subsidized loan or an unsubsidized loan. Subsidized loans mean that while the student is in their undergraduate years, the federal government pays the interest on the loan, and then after the student graduates college, they begin to paying back both the principal on the loan and also the interest. For unsubsidized loans means that while the student is in college, they are expected to pay the interest on the loan. It's not picked up by the government like the subsidized loan. For those students who have unsubsidized loans, the interest while they are in college can be paid during the time that they are in college, or they can let the interest accrue and start paying that amount back after graduation from college, as well as picking up the new interest for the future years and also the principal. Students may qualify for student loans, and also parents may qualify for loans as well through the FAFSA. Before taking out a loan, please know that the loan should be your very, very last resource towards financing the student's college education. Because this is something that has to be paid back, and if it's not paid back per the protocol of the lender and of the government lender, there are severe penalties. And I know a lot of this has been in the media lately about students not paying loans back, and it can become an extremely taxing financially situation not to pay the loans back. So before taking out a loan, I definitely recommend that you exhaust all other available resources first. See if the student should be, in addition to applying for FAFSA, should be applying for private scholarships, for college scholarships as available, and for looking perhaps at working employment, full-time or part-time, tuition reimbursement from some places of employment, but the loan should be the last option. If after exhausting all other options, the student must take out a loan, I recommend that it be a federally insured loan. Not only do you have the federal insurance of these loans, but the interest rate set forth by the federal government is a fixed rate. It will not change. If you should decide, in contrast, if you should take a loan from a private lender such as a bank, the interest rates are much higher and they are subject to increases, as well as not being insured. That concludes the FAFSA portion of our presentation. I would now like to move forward and talk about the next type of financial aid application, which is the CSS profile. The CSS profile is another type of financial aid application. Some, but not all colleges require that the CSS profile be submitted. If you are applying to one or more colleges that require the CSS profile, you can access it through College Board. Most high school seniors have a College Board login, and that is where they go to access the CSS profile. The CSS profile is a lengthy and detailed financial aid application. It's much more time consuming than the FAFSA and also asks for more details about the student parent's financial situation. There is a fee to submit the CSS profile, whereas there is no fee to submit the FAFSA application. The other thing that I would like to add regarding financial aid is that in addition to completing the FAFSA and, if required, the CSS profile, is that for each college that student is applying to, that they go on to the financial aid page of that college's website and read the instructions for how to apply for financial aid. All schools will require the FAFSA. Some may require the CSS profile, and some colleges have their own financial aid applications that need to be completed as well, along with other forms that need to be completed. Additionally, some schools require the student to submit the parent and student, if applicable, tax return as part of, in order to be considered for financial aid and as part of that application process. So I can't stress enough that it's not in addition to submitting the FAFSA and if required, the CSS profile, be sure you check out the instructions on the college website to be sure that you're not missing any other steps or any other documentation that has to be required. Because if you do not follow the college's application instructions exactly as written, the file will be considered incomplete and the student will not be considered at all for financial aid. I'd now like to move forward with the college merit scholarships and private scholarships portion of our webinar. Let's begin with college-sponsored scholarships. College-sponsored scholarships, or merit scholarships, are awarded to students not based on their need, but rather based on their academic performance in high school, and oftentimes their SAT and or ACT scores and other factors. There may be merit college-sponsored scholarships for students with strong community service records. There may be merit college-sponsored scholarships for students who have particular talents, such as an art portfolio, students who have theatrical background, students who have music background, such as through an audition. But generally, the term merit or college-sponsored scholarships typically means scholarships from a specific college that are not need-based, but based on these other factors instead. When considering how much opportunity a student would have to receive college-sponsored or merit scholarships, this should begin as early as when the student is actually choosing colleges to apply to. Some colleges have merit scholarship awards available for students, others do not. So when you're thinking about which colleges you would apply to, and you're considering factors such as geographic location, the academic majors that the college offers, the size of the student enrollment, and so forth, take a look at the merit scholarships that are available from that particular college and what the criteria is. And you may decide to apply for schools that do offer more merit scholarships than perhaps other schools that do not. In order to be considered for a merit scholarship at a specific college, sometimes when the student applies for admission to the college, they are automatically considered for all merit scholarships. However, many colleges have additional scholarships that students can be considered for, but do require a separate application. And oftentimes these separate applications have application deadlines that are different than the admission application deadline. In some cases, the scholarship application deadlines are earlier than the admission application deadline. So once the student knows what colleges they will be applying to, it would behoove them to check with each college that they are applying to, and either on the website or by making a phone call to the college, inquire and find out as to whether in order for the student to be considered for the merit scholarship, do they need to do any separate applications or not. Moving forward now to the private scholarships and whether to apply. This is another topic that's been pretty hot in the media for the last year or two, and there's been a lot of myths and also correct information about whether students should be applying for private scholarships. Some students and parents are under the belief that it's not a good use of time to apply for private scholarships because it reduces the amount of financial aid that the student would be receiving from that institution. My philosophy is a little bit different, and I'll explain. The first thing that I recommend that the parent and student does before the student applies for any private scholarship is to find out from that sponsoring organization, how is that award dispersed? Is it dispersed directly to the college, or is it dispersed to the student? It's also important to know that students do not have to be in 12th grade to apply for private scholarships. There are private scholarships available for students to apply from elementary and middle school all the way through senior year. So in some cases, let's say a student in the 9th grade receives a private scholarship. In some instances, the organization may send the money directly to the student, and the student can place that money in a bank account until they're ready to attend college. Or in other instances, the scholarship will hold on to it until the student is ready to attend college, and once they are, they let the scholarship organization know which college they will be attending, and the scholarship organization sends the award to the college. So that's an important factor to find out. Now, in some rare instances, what happens is if students receive a significant amount of financial aid awards and also have qualified for a number of high amount private scholarships, the student may run into a situation where they're called quote-unquote overfunded. And what this means is that between the financial aid and the private scholarships, the amount that the student has earned collectively is actually more than what it costs the student to attend college that first year. So in order to avoid this situation, private scholarship sponsoring organizations are becoming very savvy about this. And what they are doing is, in some instances, communicating with the student before dispersing the money to the college, because they want to be sure that the money is going to be used for college expenses and not simply to reduce the student's financial aid award. So a lot of private scholarship organizations now coordinate with the student on that. And in some cases, if they will be overfunded, the scholarship organization will hold on to that money and allow the student to use it not necessarily for tuition, room, and board, but perhaps to use it for books or other expenses. And in some instances, they will hold on, at the student's request, hold on to it, and if the student should decide to attend graduate school, then release the award at that time towards graduate school expenses. So my philosophy is that rather a black and white situation, that it's not a good idea to apply for private scholarships, is to find out how the award is dispersed. Secondly, I do acknowledge that completing high-quality private scholarship applications is very time-consuming, and we all know how busy students are during the school year. So I definitely recommend that the student strategically choose which private scholarships they should apply to based on how well they fit the eligibility criteria, based on the amount of the scholarship award, based on the number of awards that will be dispersed, and other factors. That way the student can spend their time most efficiently on those private scholarships that they are most likely to qualify for. And third, just by way of probability, the more scholarships that the student applies for, the greater their chances of receiving an award. What I've listed under this umbrella are a number, but not an exhaustive list, of eligibility criteria for various private scholarships. So my point with this slide is, when first thinking about private scholarships to apply for, and I had mentioned to maximize and make most efficient use of student time to choose those that they would be most likely to receive, to think big in terms, and then narrow down. So the students should be thinking about their school performance, their performance in the community, and personal traits. So for instance, there are certain private scholarships for students with specific academic strengths, for students with talents, as I've mentioned earlier, such as music, submitting a CD of the student's musical performance, of students who are artistically inclined, of submitting a portfolio or an art creation, special achievements that students have earned, where the student resides, the student's gender. Sometimes private scholarships are earmarked for either male or female students. Also, sometimes private scholarships are also dependent on the student's financial need, and also sometimes the student's ethnicity. This is by no means an exhaustive list, but again, the point is for the student to take note and do some reflecting on what their strongest qualities are and what makes them individual and unique, and then seek out scholarships by which they can capitalize on these particular traits. When choosing private scholarships to apply for, beware of scams. Very important, so as to not, with the high rate these days of identity theft, it's very important to know that if a private scholarship should ask a student for their social security number, for their banking information, for their credit card numbers, the student should not by any means be applying for these particular scholarships. Legit scholarships don't ask students for this kind of information. Also, students should never be required to have to make a payment in order to apply for a scholarship, nor should they be required to purchase a product. I definitely recommend, if any scholarship requests this kind of information from the student or parent, don't apply and avoid. With regard to seeking out and searching for private scholarships, I recommend that students look at foundations. Oftentimes within a state or a particular county, there are educational foundations set up which provide scholarships to students. So in order to find these, one way to do that is through just a simple Google search, to put in educational foundation scholarships and then the name of your particular county or state. That's oftentimes a good starting place. Also think about community organizations and civic groups in your local community. It could be anything from the Boy Scouts to the local Rotary Club, Kiwanis Club, all kinds of civic organizations, particularly ones that the parents or the students are actually a member of. For other community organizations, such as there's one through the VFW, the Veterans of Foreign War, where you don't have to be a member, but these community organizations offer private scholarships for students to apply for. Also, students should be thinking about any religious organizations that they belong to, or any ethnicity-based organizations. And don't hesitate to, if you belong to a church or synagogue or another place of religious worship, or a certain organization affiliated with your ethnicity, don't be shy. Don't hesitate to ask if that particular organization does offer private scholarships that you can apply for. Also, organizations related to the students' academic and career interests. By this, we're talking about oftentimes professional organizations, such as professional engineering associations oftentimes offer private scholarships that high school students could apply for those for students who are interested in entering the field of engineering and studying engineering in college. Also think about local businesses and employers. Again, don't hesitate to ask. You never know. Oftentimes there are businesses and employers. For instance, it could be anything from Comcast scholarship. One of my students recently received a $1,000 Comcast award. Could be a local business in your area, Coca-Cola Corporation, all kinds of businesses and employers that offer private scholarships as well. To really facilitate your scholarship search, I've listed some of my favorite websites and books. I really, though, encourage you to use the website because the information is much more readily available. It's updated all the time. However, for certain types of scholarships, such as student-athlete scholarships and others, the books may be helpful as well. But in particular, I've listed a number of websites. By far, probably most frequently used website is fastweb.com. But any of these links that I've listed here, any of these websites, these are all scholarship search engines. So if you were to go on to any one of these, you would be required to put in the student would put in some information about themselves, but not any identifying information. And then also to respond to a number of questions, such as what are your academic strengths, perhaps the SAT, ACT scores, the GPA, activities that the student participated in high school, and so forth. After completing the search questions, you simply click on results, and a list of scholarships comes up that matches up with the student's responses to those particular questions. And then from there, the student can take a look at the list of scholarships that did appear for them, and those links are provided to any of the scholarships on their list, so then they can investigate the scholarship even further by going on to the college website, by going on to the scholarship website and decide if that's one of the scholarships that they would like to apply for. Before we move to the last segment of our presentation, I would like to answer some of the questions that have been submitted. For those questions that I am not able to address at this time, please do not hesitate to contact me via email, Nancy, N-A-N-C-Y, at educationalexcellence.info. One of the questions is, will Florida prepaid affect the EFC? That's a very good question, and yes, indeed it will. That for students or parents, it's actually on the parent side because it's the parent that holds the Florida prepaid. That prepaid amount is required to be listed on the FAFSA application. The second question is, will I send out slides from this presentation? Yes, I would be happy to do so if you would send me an email, and either myself or my assistant, Christy Garcia, would be happy to send you the slides. The next question is, if a student lives with two adults, a parent, and the parent's live-in, non-married partner, but the partner is not one of the student's parents, does the partner's income need to be reported? I'm glad that question was asked because that actually helps me to reinforce what I was mentioning earlier in the presentation, which is different from past years. For this year, let me just take another look at the question. The student was two parents, an adult, and the parents live in. Oh, the parent is. Oh, wait, the student lives with two adults, a parent, and the parents live in non-married partner, but the partner is not one of the student's parents. Does the partner's income need to be reported? That's actually, let me back up on that. I stand to be corrected. I misread the question the first time, and I apologize. That question has some gray areas to it, and I would hesitate to give out a general kind of response to that question. Because there's a few additional questions that need to be asked specific to that individual situation. So what I would like to ask is if the person who submitted that question could submit it to me through email at Nancy at educationalexcellence.info, and I would be happy to contact you either by email or by phone if you would please include your phone number so we can sort that out on an individual basis. The next question is, what is the expected interest rate on a federally insured loan? The interest rates vary, but they're usually in the neighborhood of 4 to 6%. The next question, how much money can I get strictly in result of the FAFSA? That depends. That depends on your EFC. So it's hard to determine how much money you could get just from FAFSA until you actually complete the FAFSA application and then submit it. Because as soon as you submit it, you will get your EFC immediately, and then that will give you an estimate as to how much you would be expected to pay out of pocket, and then you would also be able to see instantly any governmental grants and scholarships and loans that the student would qualify for. But this is probably a good segue into something else that I need to bring up, which is that, just as I said, once you submit the FAFSA application, you will be able to instantly see your EFC and also any government scholarships, grants, and loans that the student qualifies for. You will not be able to see any grants that the student qualifies for from the college itself. That comes from the college at the discretion of the college. So let me explain. What happens is when you submit a FAFSA application, in simple terms, it goes two ways. There's two different streets. The first street is it goes the federal government route, and the student is considered for any scholarships, grants, and loans through the federal government. However, it also goes to the institutions that are listed, that the student lists on their FAFSA application, to all of those colleges and universities. All of those colleges and universities have their own way to evaluate how much grant or scholarship money, need-based, the student would receive. And so they have their own formula for doing that. So the student would not find that amount out from the college until they have been accepted to the college and all of the financial aid and the FAFSA and any other financial aid applications or documentation has been sent in, and then the college sends the student a scholarship and financial aid package that shows line by line every scholarship, grant, work, study, and loan that the student will qualify for at their institution with the respective amounts for each award. The last question is, what if parents are divorced? The child lives with the mother full-time, but the father claims the child on the tax return per the divorce decree. The way that the FAFSA works is that whichever of the parent, mother or father, if the parents are divorced, whichever one pays more than 50% of the child's living expenses annually, and in this instance it would be during 2013, whichever parent pays more than 50%, that's the parent who reports on the FAFSA. In some instances it's split 50-50 between both parents, and in that instance it's the parent with the higher income who reports on the FAFSA. I think we've answered most of our questions this evening, and as I said earlier, if I did not get to your question or you think of any questions, we will answer more questions later at the end of the presentation, and you're always welcome to email questions to me as well. Before we move over, this concludes the FAFSA CSS Profile College Scholarships and Private Scholarships portion of our webinar. Our final topic pertains to the Florida Bright Future Scholarship and other scholarships and grants for Florida residents. For those of you who are non-Florida residents, you're welcome to stay on with us. However, if you wish to sign off at this time, I would like to again thank you for attending our presentation. I hope that this was a valuable experience. Please do not hesitate to contact Educational Excellence for your college planning and tutoring needs. And now we will move forward with the final portion of the presentation. Scholarships and grants for Florida residents. I'm going to begin by talking about the Florida Bright Future Scholarship. The website listed on the screen, www.floridastudentfinancialaid.org, is the link or the website where the student goes to complete their application for the Florida Bright Future Scholarship. When you complete this application, the student is not only considered for the Florida Bright Future Scholarship, but they are considered for other need-based Florida state aid and also other Florida scholarships as well. I do definitely recommend that every Florida student complete this application, whether or not you think you will qualify and whether or not you think you will use the scholarship if awarded. Even if you don't have the minimum GPA and test scores and community service for the scholarship, I still recommend you apply anyway, because even if you don't earn the Bright Future Scholarship, as I said, there is other Florida need-based aid and scholarships that the student may qualify for. The application opened for current high school seniors on December 1. I recommend that students complete the application as soon as possible. They do have until their high school graduation day to complete the application, but it may not be completed after. And again, we all know how busy high school seniors are, especially second semester. Hope not a little bit of senioritis, and also just gearing up for graduation. Sometimes these things get overlooked, so I recommend that the students take care of submitting this application as soon as possible. As I said, students are not allowed to go back and submit the application after graduation day. Even if the student should not complete the application because they think they will be attending an out-of-state school, you never know what the future will bring. There's been many cases where students did not complete the application. They started to attend an out-of-state school. The unforeseen happened, and they had to come back to the state of Florida to attend college. And even though in high school they had the qualifying GPA test scores and community service, they didn't complete that FAFSA application before high school graduate Bright Futures. I'm sorry, they did not complete that Bright Futures application before graduation day, and they will not receive the award to use it for the rest of their college education in Florida. Let me also remind you that the Florida Bright Future Scholarship can be used in its full amount at any public, university, college, community college, or career or technical school in the state of Florida. And for a lesser amount of an award, it can be used at public universities in Florida, and I will explain this a little bit later in the presentation. Let's start with there are 3 Bright Future scholarships that the student can earn. The first is the Florida Academic Scholarship. This requires a 3.5 weighted GPA and a 1290 on the critical reading and math sections combined of the SAT, or a 29 composite on the ACT, and 100 hours of community service. For the Florida Medallion Scholarship, the minimum requirement is a 3.0 weighted GPA and an 1170 SAT combined reading, critical reading and math sections, or a 26 ACT composite and 75 hours of community service. Now, regarding the test scores, Bright Futures will what's called super score. So what that means is if the student should earn their best reading score in say last month in December, and they earn their best math score in January, and together those scores equal at least 1290, Bright Futures will accept reading and math scores from different months. Similarly, with the 29 ACT composite or the 26 for the medallion, they will also super score. So maybe the student had their best reading ACT score in September, and then maybe they take the test again in February and they earn their best English, math, and science scores. And those 4 scores together, divided by 4, is at least a 26 for the medallion or a 29 for the academic. Bright Futures will super score the ACT as well. Once you start to complete your application, you will be required to set up a login account and a PIN number. Just like the FAFSA number, keep the PIN number in a safe place so you can use it from year to year. There's only one, there is not a parent and student PIN number like there is for the FAFSA. There's just one PIN. Also, Bright Futures does not send updates about the student's status via email to the student's email. So again, it's important to keep that PIN number in a safe place so that you can use it to track your application and to note any updates to your account. Now, with regard to how the Bright Futures GPA is calculated, these are the requirements for both the academic and the medallion awards. 4 years of English, 4 years of math, Algebra 1 level and above, 3 years of social science, which includes both history courses, American government, economics courses, psychology, sociology, etc. 3 years of natural science, 2 years of the same foreign language. After those courses are looked at by Bright Futures for consideration of the scholarship, if the student has not met the required minimum GPA, they may use up to 2 additional credits in any of these above areas if it helps to bring up their GPA to the minimum requirement. Also, the student may use any fine art AP, IB, or ACE course to increase their GPA as well. Please note that the Bright Futures GPA is not the same GPA that is on the student's high school transcript. Bright Futures calculates and weights the GPA different from high schools and also different from the way that Florida public universities calculate the GPA when they are considering the student for admission. Bright Futures weights a 0.25 per semester for any AP, pre-IB, IB, honors, pre-ACE, ACE, dual enrollment course. Courses of any of these levels all receive the same weight, 0.25 for 1 semester and 0.50 for a 2-semester course. Other ways to qualify for the Academic Scholars Award, which also will still include the 100 hours of community service, are National Merit or Achievement Scholars and Finalists, National Hispanic Scholars, IB Diploma, IB Curriculum without the diploma if the student has earned the minimum required test scores, ACE Diploma, or ACE Curriculum without the diploma, again, if the student has earned the required test scores. Other ways to qualify for the Medallion Award, along with having the 75 hours of community service, are National Merit or Achievement Scholars and Finalists, National Hispanic Scholars, students who earn an IB Diploma, students who earn an IB Curriculum, who have completed the IB Curriculum with the minimum required SAT or ACT scores, students who have earned an ACE Diploma, or students who have earned the ACE Curriculum and have without the diploma but do have the qualifying minimum test scores. The third type of Bright Futures Scholarship Award is the Gold Seal Vocational Scholars Award. Beginning last year, this award may not be used for a bachelor degree program at a four-year institution. It must be used for a vocational or career state-approved training program. The requirements for GPA are a 3.0 weighted GPA in the 16 core credits required for the four-year high school diploma, and also a 3.5 unweighted GPA in the 3 career and technology education credits in one vocational program taken over at least 2 academic years. Florida Gold Seal vocational scholars are required to complete 30 hours of community service. Regarding test scores, on the SAT, a 440 in critical reading and a minimum 440 in math. On the ACT, a minimum 17 in English, 18 in reading, 19 in math. On the PERT test, a 104 in reading, a 99 in writing, and a 113 in algebra. I should also add, with regard to community service requirements for all 3 scholarships, academic medallion and gold seal, all of the required hours do not have to be completed in the senior year. They can be accumulated from 9th grade through the end of the senior year. These are some important requirements for all Bright Future scholarships. The student must be a Florida resident and a U.S. citizen or eligible non-citizen as determined by the post-secondary institution. The student must be pursuing an undergraduate degree at an eligible Florida post-secondary institution. And this is a good time for me to bring up what I mentioned earlier, is that the full amount of the Bright Future Scholarship can be used at any Florida public institution, college or university. For private universities, for sake of example, the University of Miami, if the student should have earned the academic award, Bright Futures Academic Award, which pays just under 100% of the tuition, it would pay that amount, just under 100%, at any Florida public university, like Florida Atlantic University, University of Florida, and so forth. At a private, and usually right now, the annual tuition at a public university is approximately $6,000. If students should earn the Bright Futures Academic Scholarship and decide to attend the University of Miami, the tuition at the University of Miami is much, much higher than it is at a Florida public institution. So the Bright Futures would not pay just under 100%. It would pay the dollar value, which is about $6,000. More requirements for Bright Future scholarships are that the student graduate from a public high school or a Florida Department of Education registered private high school. They must not be found guilty of or plead no contest to a felony charge in adult court. We had a question earlier about the Florida prepaid. Please know that if the student is eligible for the Florida and awarded the Florida Bright Future Scholarship and the parents have also purchased the Florida prepaid, both may be used. Neither entitlement is lost because the student has both. If the amount of the Bright Future Scholarship Award and the Florida prepaid exceeds what the student needs in order to pay their tuition and their room and board, the excess is cut in a check given directly to the student. Also, please know that for the Bright Future Scholarship, funding begins in the fall semester after high school graduation. It cannot be used for students who are starting college in the summer after high school graduation. The Bright Futures cannot be used because it begins in the fall semester. Some other important additional information about using the Florida Bright Future scholarships. Students are not required to be enrolled full-time. Full-time students must earn 24 semester hours per academic year. That's the fall and the spring semester collectively. Part-time students must enroll in a minimum of 6 hours per semester and earn the required number of hours they were funded for. This is very important. If a student is receiving the Bright Future Scholarship to pay for their courses and they withdraw or drop from a course after that college's drop-add period is over, the student is required to pay back to the college the amount that the Bright Futures covered for that particular course. If the student drops the course during the college's designated drop-add period, there is no penalty at all. But if they drop or withdraw from that course after that drop-add period, and ultimately their grade will turn into an F, they are required to pay that money back. Bright Future Scholarship funding will be paid for up to 120 credit hours, because 120 credit hours is what's required to receive an undergraduate diploma. The initial funding must start within 2 years after high school graduation, and the award will apply for up to 5 years after high school graduation. Students who receive a bachelor's degree in 7 or less semesters may receive funding for 1 semester of graduate study, maximum 15 hours at the undergraduate rate if the graduate school is at a Florida public university. With regard to students renewing the Bright Future Scholarship from year to year, so let's use the example of a student who's a freshman and they have completed their freshman year. In order for that to renew for their sophomore year, their GPA at the college for that year must be a 3.0 if they're receiving the Academic Scholars Award. For students who are receiving the Medallion or Gold Seal Scholars, the minimum GPA for the freshman year at that college is a 2.75. And it's the same GPA requirements to renew from sophomore to junior year and junior to senior year. If after the freshman year GPA, the student is below the required GPA, they are granted a one-time restoration for sophomore year, meaning they still receive the Bright Future Scholarship in their sophomore year. However, if during sophomore year the student does not meet the student's sophomore yearly GPA, does not meet the minimum required GPA to renew the scholarship, they will lose the scholarship and will not have any more restoration. The same is true if that should happen during their junior year. So restoration may only happen with regard to the freshman year GPA. Enough about what the Bright Future Scholarship is and what the criteria is to apply and how the application process works. Now let's get to the important information, even more important information. What does the Bright Future Scholarship pay? At a 4-year institution, per semester hour, for students who are receiving the academic award, it pays $103 per credit hour. For those students at a 4-year institution who are receiving the Medallion Award, it pays $77 per semester hour. For students who are earning their associate's degree at a public university and have the academic award, the award is $63 per semester hour. And for those who have the Medallion Award, it's $48 per semester hour. Now compare that to the current costs at Florida public universities for Florida residents. For those that are attending now, a 4-year public institution, 1 credit hour is $105. So students who are receiving the academic award, Bright Futures is paying $103 out of every semester hour, which costs $105. So that's only a $2 difference that comes either out of pocket or from another source. Students who are receiving the Medallion Award, it pays $77 out of $105 per semester hour. Still not shabby when it comes to a significant source of scholarship aid for the student. The current cost for an associate per semester hour at a public associate's degree institution is $98.25. I had mentioned at the beginning of this segment that when you complete the application for Bright Future Scholarship, that all students should apply, because you're not only being considered for the Bright Future Scholarship, but you're being considered for other state program aid, need-based aid, and merit scholarships as well. And I wanted to mention a few of these. One is the Florida Residency Access Grant. This usually varies between $2,000 and $3,000. And for any student who decides to attend a private university in Florida, the student automatically receives that Florida Residency Access Grant. All they have to do to receive it is to complete that Florida Bright Futures application at that website that we showed you earlier. Also, students will be considered for the First Generation Matching Grant Program. This is for students whose parents have not earned bachelor degrees. They will also be considered for the Florida Work Experience Program, which parallels the FAFSA work study program that I talked about earlier, except that it's state money being used to pay for it instead of federal. Students will be considered for the Rosewood Family Scholarship Program, the Jose Marti Scholarship Challenge Grant, the Mary McLeod Bethune Scholarship Program, and the Florida Public Post-Secondary Career Education Student Assistance Grant Program. Again, you must submit the Florida Student Financial Aid application in order to receive these awards above, as well as the Florida Bright Future Scholarship. Before we conclude our presentation, I would like to answer some of the questions that have been submitted. For those questions that I am not able to address, please, again, don't hesitate to contact me via email, nancy@educationalexcellence.info. And I see that we have one question, and it says, is the weighted GPA, with regard to the Bright Futures, is the weighted GPA the HPA? There is no HPA with regard to the Bright Future Scholarship. There's one weighted GPA, and it is not the weighted GPA that is on the high school transcript. The weighted GPA comes from the 4 years of English, the 4 years of math, Algebra 1 or higher, the three years of social science, the 3 years of natural science, the 2 years of foreign language, and the optional 2 additional credits. If the student is taking any of those courses at the regular level, not honors or higher, then it's just based on a 4.0 scale. An A is 4, a B is 3, etc. If the student is taking any of those courses at the honors level or higher, doesn't matter if it's honors, AP, dual enrollment, ACE, IB, etc., it's automatically given an additional 0.25 weight for each semester. I think that takes care of all of the questions that we have received this evening. I'm glad that I was able to get to all of them. And I would like to thank all of you for hanging in there with us throughout the entire presentation. I hope again for you that this was a valuable experience. Please, again, do not hesitate to contact Educational Excellence for your college planning and tutoring needs. And I wish you all a pleasant rest of the evening.